Yeah, so we are starting in a second over here. So first of all, thank you all for joining us for this session. And we will now begin our session on Windows Azure Infrastructure as a Service, or also known as the IaaS. Let's begin our session now. So first of all, thank you very much for joining us on this session today with 9.9 and IT Next. Our topic today is Windows Azure IaaS. It's primarily we will be focusing upon the Windows Azure virtual machines and Windows Azure networking for next one and a half hour that we have. I will be dividing the session into the session plus some time for questions and answers from your end. And before we begin, let me quickly introduce myself. So my name is Aviraj. I am a technical evangelist with Microsoft Corporation India. And that's my blog address, blogs.technet.com/Aviraj. I often write a lot of articles, and lately we did some events from Microsoft for our customers and all. And specifically, I have used some content around the labs and the some manuals that we prepared, where you can just go ahead and start learning some stuff on your own. So you are free to visit my blog, and you can just go ahead and download the manual. All you require is your Azure subscription, the trial subscription, and you can just get going. So with these things, you are good to go over there. So I'm also available on Twitter. So if you have any questions, queries online, you can just connect with me online as well on Twitter, so that we can have more discussion around any of the technologies, or if you have any specific queries around the topic. Our session is divided into this following agenda. So I have put up the agenda that why should you attend this particular session. So I have first session objectives and key takeaways that I'll be covering. Then I'll introduce to what is Windows Azure. Windows Azure is our data center based solution, wherein we are offering the platform as a solution offering and the infrastructure as a service offering to our customers throughout the globe. Then we will discuss what are virtual machines. We will talk about the Windows Azure virtual networks, and then we will build some demos, then we will build some networks, and that's the whole idea that we're going to do for next 1 hour. I'll be talking about some of the Windows Azure VM availability options as well. And lastly, we will have some demos, and we will have some quick summary over here. So quick session objectives and key takeaways. Why should you attend this session? First of all, I would like to demonstrate what is Windows Azure. You will get to see more of Windows Azure, the public cloud offering from Microsoft. And then you should be able to build applications or create virtual machines on Azure platform. Second objective of this session is that while we are offering you this as a public cloud offering, now when I say public cloud, it means we have a data center and you are hosting our data into our data center. It could be an application, it could be a virtual machine, something that you can think of. And then Windows Azure now supports the IaaS as well. That's the key takeaway, which is very new. Because if you have seen Windows Azure for last few years, or if you have never heard of Azure, Azure has been our offering wherein we have provided the platform to the customers where you as a customer could build your .NET application, or let's say your web application, and you will just package it up and put it on Azure. And we will look after the scaling up and the scaling down part for your application. But on the last year time frame of the June, we have introduced something called as the Infrastructure as a Service offering, that is IaaS, through which we have introduced two options wherein you could create your own virtual machine in Azure, or you can just create it from a template or upload your own virtual machine to Azure. And secondly, we introduced the Windows Azure networking. That means bring your network or bring your DNS to the Azure. You can customize and build your own network, your specific network, IP range, address range, subnet mask. You can define all that in your environment in Azure. So we support that for all of your enterprise workload. So things like SharePoint, SQL, Windows Server file services, Active Directory domain controller, DNS, all that you can run into Azure instead of deploying that onto your infrastructure in your organization. And the last key takeaway from the session is that Microsoft is the only provider of a true hybrid cloud solution in the market, because not only we are offering you on-premise, we are also offering you all the solutions online through public cloud. And at the end of the day, you can choose whether do you want to go pure private, that is in the corporate environment, or pure public, which is your Windows Azure Platform as a Service or Infrastructure as a Service, or even a Software as a Service, which is Office 365, Windows Intune, or Dynamics, or you can choose a pure hybrid model. So that is the key takeaway from this particular session that you will be seeing eventually. I want to set up an expectation at the beginning of the session is that what we are not covering. So I'm not covering Windows Azure websites. Given the time we have, I want to focus only on the infrastructure end of this particular spectrum, and I want to make sure that whatever features that I am covering are specifically designed for IT professionals. I mean, someone who works a lot for infrastructure management or data center management, things like that. We will be talking about the servers, IP address, networking, remote management, deployment, migration, and all these points that typically you will hear from an IT pro perspective. We are not talking about any development perspective, so we will not be talking about cloud services. We will not be touching cloud services. We will not talk about Azure Connect, Service Bus, which are under developer-specific features. We're not touching that. I'm not talking about the SQL Azure and database. So I hope that is kind of very clear to all of you, because I want to set an expectation so that you will be aware that what you'll be getting from this particular session from next 1 hour or so. So let's start with our agenda and let's talk to you about the introduction to Windows Azure. So for those who are familiar with Windows Azure and for those who have been seeing this Azure for the first time, so Windows Azure is our data center that's our data centers, that is spanning across the globe. So we have multiple data centers across the globe. We have few in North America, few in European continents, and we have few in the Asian continents, Asian subcontinents and all. So the whole idea of Azure is that Windows Azure is nothing but we are offering you the place where you can host your application or host your infrastructure, that is your virtual machine, networks, website, and you can just manage it remotely. That's the whole idea of Windows Azure. What is the difference between your infrastructure and Azure? Well, when I say private cloud or your corporate network, everything is into your environment. Basically, you will buy servers, you will buy hardware, you will configure operating systems, you will configure networking, you will configure the server roles, you will deploy group policy, you manage everything. That is from the network storage servers, virtualization, and almost everything that you will manage on your own. So nothing that you get. So on the left-hand side, whatever that you're seeing on the screen is something that you manage, which is this part of the thing. And then what we are now offering as a part of the data center solution is this infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and a software as a service over here. What we are focusing right now is this particular piece, which is infrastructure as a service, wherein what we have announced is that we are giving you the data center offering through this part, where we are covering networking, storage, server, and virtualization, and from the operating system to the applications layer, it's what you are going to manage. This is what we announced, and this is what we're focusing today. However, I want to highlight you that if you are a developer and if you just want to focus upon your application, then platform as a service is the way to go. We have announced this long back in 2008. Since 2008 onwards till 2012, we were offering this, the middle part of it, which is the platform as a service. It means we were managing operating system, middleware, and up to runtime. And all you have to worry about is your application and data. That's about it. You don't have to worry about the application software update or the patches and the fixes and management. Not at all. Nothing like that you have to worry about. All you have to worry about is your application and your data that you build, which you will upload on the Azure website, and we'll just do scale up, scale down with all the cloud attributes. So the whole idea of using IaaS is you will get a control at the OS level as well. So from OS level to the middleware to the runtime, everything you can configure. In simple words, if you want to install Windows Server in Azure, you can do that. If you want to install Linux distribution in Azure, you can do that on your own. You don't have to depend upon just an application, but you get a full access to the operating system in your environment. That's the whole idea of Azure. Like I said, when I said Azure is basically the set of services that we are offering you through our data centers that you can just go ahead and use on the pay-per-use model or as a subscription model. and it's a global network of the Microsoft managed data centers. That's in short what we have over there. Now, typically, you will have, flexibility to move across the, deploy your application into various data centers. You will get a full control over there. You can manage it from any location. We are giving you various options which will allow you to manage your applications and infrastructure through the portal or through the scripting-based environment that I'm going to demonstrate in few minutes. It's open. The way it is open in terms of the industry requirements or your industry standards. For example, today if you want to deploy some dotted application, you can do that over Azure. Or if you want to create a Windows Server Active Domain Controller, you can just go ahead and deploy that. But what if you want to deploy some Linux-based application? What if you want to deploy WordPress? What if you want to deploy Apache or Sugar CRM or Joomla or any other open source application in Azure? Well, it's fully supported over there in Azure, and I'm going to just explain that in some time. It's extremely solid, means we have the full security in our environment. We have the geo-redundant data replication that we have in place. We have security, we have the certifications, which will give you full confidence on making sure that Azure is the best platform for you to deploy. So what is Windows Azure? In short, basically Windows Azure is our set of data centers which are designed to host your applications, which is a platform as a service offering, and allows you to create, manage virtual machines in Azure and build and create your own network in Azure environment. So we have a global footprint in worldwide Azure market that we have. We have total of 4 data centers in US. So if you see, this particular region is my 4 data centers, and if you see, I have 4 data centers in US. I have 2 data centers right now in US, and I have about 2 data centers in my Southeast Asian subcontinent. Now, if you see the way we are organized, all the data centers are kind of designed in pairs. So if you see, this is a pair, this is a pair, this is a pair, and apart from these 8 data centers, we have 7 more data centers are in progress, which are right now, that we will be announcing soon. And China is something that we announced some time back online. So the blue dot is a set of the data centers which we have across the globe. So we have a total of 8 data centers which are completely managed by Microsoft. But there are places where you cannot reach out to the data centers effectively. Well, in that cases, we make use of these CDNs. So the green dots that you're seeing on the screen is called as the Content Distribution Network, CDN. So for the places where you are not able to reach, you will make use of the CDN locations to connect and talk to your application real time. As a part of the standard, SLA that we are offering to all of our customers, we offer the 99.95% monthly SLA for our cloud services, your virtual machines, if they are running up in multiple instances for your high availability. Same is applicable for your applications that you run inside of your environment. And in case we are not able to meet our SLA, then we make sure that we will give you the credit in the next month whenever you kind of go ahead and try to make up your payment, and that will be reflecting in your upcoming subscription or in upcoming billing model that you will have in Azure environment. The whole idea of Azure is very simple, that you will pay only for what you use. So you can get a full summary of bill for whatever technology or whatever amount of course or services that you have utilized throughout this particular month in Azure environment. Now let's talk about the Azure virtual machines and Azure virtual networks now. So primarily last year we announced 3 things. We talked about the Azure virtual machines, we talked about the cloud services, and we talked about the websites. But what cloud services is something that we already had since 2008. So cloud services is primarily your platform as a service offering. Website, it's still under preview. I'll just show you in a demo that how does it look like at least. Preview means that you cannot use it in production environment. But if you're talking about the virtual machines and virtual networks, well, they're fully supported in the production environment. You can just go sign up for Azure today, subscribe to it, and start, planning towards putting your corporate, production environment running on Azure, which can be your applications or virtual machines fully supported from now on. So we announced it on 16th April, which was a major announcement around Azure IaaS offerings. So you can just go ahead and start using that in your environment right now. So one of the things that we have right now is that the virtual machines. So Windows Azure Virtual Machines is a way through which we can now allow you to run all of your persistent stateful VMs in Azure environment. What does that mean in simple words? If you talk about your platform as a service offering wherein you write a .NET code, you write a Java code, a PHP code, and put it onto Azure, it's fully supported. But what happens in that case is that when you use any of those cloud services model, that is web role, worker role, something that we have in Azure, it basically uses the virtual machines in the backend, but the only difference is that instead of using the stateful VMs, it uses the stateless VMs. What does that mean? So if I'm putting up let's say an ASP.NET website to Azure, which is a cloud services project, and if I deploy it, I do not care literally as an end user what is the computer name of the VM where my application is running. What happens to that VM does not matter. Azure takes care of seeing a new VM and making sure my app is running. All you just care about your application and the DNS name. That's what you just care about, and your data. However, if you compare it with your on-premise infrastructure that you have deployed in your organization, you have to worry about the computer name. For example, if you have deployed, let's say, a domain controller, a DNS, or let's say some other, infrastructure as a service, let's say SQL. Every time you are working on that particular virtual machine, you have to make sure that the VM is in a state, it has a valid IP address, it has a valid computer name, it's got SIDs in place, it's got a MAC address and things like that. If that system is down, if the computer name is changed, then your whole system is down. You cannot just use it. So this is prone to that kind of an issues, and that's what the virtual machines are very critical in Azure environment. So we are now giving you that support. So first, you can run Windows Server and Linux virtual machines in Azure environment. Secondly, you can run different set of workloads, and third, we now allow you to do something called as the virtual networks or the VPN, virtual private network, which allows you to connect your corporate network to the Azure environment. This is something now completely possible with Azure environment. Before we proceed, I want to highlight one thing is that Windows Azure is our data center offering, which is entirely powered by Windows Server 2012. Windows Server 2012 is our newly released operating system for server, and which uses Hyper-V as a virtualization platform to create VMs, manage VMs. Windows Azure uses the same build in the backend to make use of the virtual machines. So whatever VMs that you run in Azure are basically running onto the same Hyper-V platform. That's why you can do the hybrid environment model or migrate a VM from on-premise to Azure and from Azure to on-premise. So we have this new offering. This is our IaaS offering in public cloud, which is Secure as a Service offering. Some of the things I want to highlight that what you get with Azure Virtual Machines, we support for server applications. You can run your domain controller, file services, your other roles effectively in Azure environment. So that is something very essential that you will see in Windows Azure-based environment. Storage manageability. What you can do is you can make use of the data that we have, and you can effectively use the disks for your data in your VM. You can attach multiple disks based upon your requirement. We have some high availability features that we will discover, some networking, and the integration with our platform as a service offerings. So talking about IaaS workloads, what all you can run? Well, you can run your line of business applications like CRM, your custom .NET or Java applications that you have built. You can run file services, you can run databases like SQL, you can run TFS, you can run Dynamics in Azure, fully supported in production environment. You can even, deploy SharePoint over there. You can even, use it for dev and test-based environment. So me being a developer will test my application in Azure, and if it's ready, I can just download it as a VHD file and start deploying the same on the premise, fully supported in your environment. And lastly, hybrid applications as well are supported with this release over here. I would like to highlight some difference between, we had something called as a VM role back in 2010-11 time frame versus a virtual machine. So first of all, we now support the persistent storage, that is a stateful storage over here. The VM role was, asking you to create your own VM and deploy it in Azure, wherein now you can just go to the portal and select the server OS or the Linux OS and just start creating a VM. You don't need to upload your own virtual machine over there. Networking is kind of improved a lot, and you can just deploy your stateful applications to virtual machines over there. So before we jump onto the demonstration, we'll just quickly see what are the different options that we have available to manage my Azure-based environment that we have over here. So first of all, to get started, I can make use of the management portal, which is the Windows Azure portal, to create VMs, delete VMs, create networking, configure networking. I can use scripting option, so I can make use of the PowerShell scripting on Windows machines to manage my Azure environment. If I'm using a Mac OS X or if I'm using a Linux, we also provided you the scripts which you can make use of on those platforms as well to manage Azure-based environment. But if you're a developer and if you want to make use of the APIs, then we have provided the REST APIs to manage your Azure environment. We support Windows Server and Linux in Azure environment, and there are various sizes available, ranging from extra small to small, medium, large, extra large, and we have announced two more, A6 and A7, which I'll be demonstrating in few minutes over here. Like I said, we now support the persistent disk over here, so you have disk that you can just upload it to the Azure environment. And one of the useful scenario is something called as the BYOS or BYOE, that is bring your own server or bring your own VHD. The whole idea is very simple, that if you have any application that you're running in your environment and you know that you want to deploy it in Azure, a virtual machine, you just need to scrape a machine, create a VHD. It has to be fixed, by the way. Azure supports only fixed size VHD file format. Dynamic VHDs are not supported, and you just upload it to the cloud in a blob storage. So the blob storage is the way through which we are organizing our storage in Azure environment. And once done, I can create as many VMs I want from that particular VM over there in Azure. And we support full imaging in Azure environment. Once you have a sample VM, you can use a base VHD, create a new VM, customize the VM with your application, generalize the VHD again. What do you mean by generalize? When you generalize the VHD file, it removes all the driver information, all the hardware information, and puts the VHD in a standard format, just like how you buy and install Windows on a new box in that state. So every time you create a new virtual machine from that VHD, from a captured VM, you will be able to deploy multiple instances of the same virtual machine or the similar virtual machine with the same configuration from one VHD over there in Azure. One of the features that we have in IaaS is the image mobility. So one of the things that we have added is the support for migrating your VHD file from on-premise to Azure and vice versa. So if you have any running application that you think you can migrate it to Azure, you can just upload it to Azure. Or if you have anything that you have on-premise, you can just download it from Azure and start using it. So it's fully supported from on-premise to cloud and cloud to on-premise. This is the main highlighting factor over here. We use a typical VHD file format over there in Azure, and primarily we use the same MS technologies that we use for on-premise version. So what we have is that we have the persistent disk management option. So it's like this way. Every time you create a new virtual machine, you will be having one disk, which is my C drive. This is my OS disk over here. And then I can add additional data disks like this, ESGH, based upon my VM size. In every VM, you get this additional D drive, which is a non-persistent cache disk, which I'll be demoing during my demonstration, which you should use only for caching purpose. That's what Azure uses that for management. So we have the highly durable storage. Every time you create a VM or deploy some application, we make multiple copies, at least 3 copies of the data across there. So in case of any issues with the disk drive, we'll just get it fixed over here. So we have the different virtual machine sizes that we have. So if you see, these are the 2 that we have newly added during April announcement, A6 and A7. So you have up to 8 cores and up to 56 GB memory, and you can connect up to 16 data disks. That means you can attach up to 16 TB storage to a virtual machine in Azure-based environment. We have different types of disks. We have the data disk and we have the OS disk. Based upon the caching, you can choose what type of caching do you want for your application. For the VM management, and automation, we have various tools that we have. So we can make use of the group policy. If you have all the VMs running in Azure are domain joined, so you can deploy policies. You can even monitor those VMs from Operations Manager. I think I will show you that demo as well. And you can even use remote management. So that's one of the options that we have in my Azure-based environment and fully supported on Linux platform as well. So with this, let's jump on to the demonstration, and for that I will share my desktop so that you should be able to see my screen over here. So let me share an application. So what I'm going to show you is a couple of things. First of all, so you can start with windowsazure.com. This is our new design portal where you will find some information relevant if you are starting for Azure for the first time. If you scroll down, you will see some solutions over here, like infrastructure, dev and test, web, mobile, and many more things. You can check the pricing option over here. So you can see pricing for each of the specific service that we have. We also have the calculator as well. So you can choose if you want to compute, do you want a VM, do you want a networking, what else do you want. You can choose based upon whatever service that you want, and you will see the specific pricing over there about specific services. So talking about the VMs, you will see this kind of a detail over here for the VMs, the total cost and all. And we are completely open with the pricing that we have. And you will also find SLA over here. So like I said, you will have 99.95% SLA, which I just communicated to you on this thing, on the presentation. And also, if you just come to this particular link, which is calculator, you will see a detailed calculator for each of the service over here. So if I have to calculate a price for my virtual machines, I need to choose which virtual machine is Windows, Linux, SQL Server, and we talk on many more things over here, and even the bandwidth. So I can choose that I want a large instance of at least 2 VMs, and this is what I'll have to pay for per month based upon my requirements, which is a dedicated set of VMs with 4 cores and 7 GB of the memory. Same way, I can scroll down and see more details about different set of options that I have over here. On the same portal, you will find a documentation. We will come back to this piece, which is downloads option, where you have option to download various tools over here. You just scroll down and let me just choose this option, command line, and I should be able to download the tools that I want for my demonstration. If you go back to the main screen again, we have this. We have Azure.com website. We have 2 links. One is the portal and one is the free trial. If you want to sign up for a free trial, you can just click onto it and it will take you to the free trial section. And if you want to log on to the actual Azure portal, just click on this, right click on this, or just click onto it and say, I want to connect to the portal. And it basically connects you to this website, which is manage.windowsazure.com website over here. So if you want to try it out, you can just come over here and you can just sign up for a trial account, which will give you 3 months of trial. And we have set up the capping of $0. So we will give you only certain control so that it should not, you have the excessive usage of the services that we are providing you. So you'll be always under the billing limit that we are offering to you. So we have put up a capping over there, so you can just confidently go ahead and use that over there in Azure environment. If I go back to the portal, this is how my portal looks like. This is my Windows Azure portal, and if you see, the portal has got upper section where I have the shortcuts to all the links over here. It will enlist all of the subscriptions that I'm part of. Like I have about 4 subscriptions right now that I can make use of. So ranging from my 3 months trial, I also signed up for a trial, my internal subscription, and I have a couple of MSDN subscriptions as well over here. So that is something that I have. And I have logged in with my live ID, and this is where I can see my bill over here. So if you want to understand how my billing cycle works, I can just come over here, sign up with my credentials, and I'll be able to see my billing detail over here. So that's what the access that it gives me with the comprehensive details about my subscriptions that I have in my environment. So if I click onto it, a 3 months trial subscription, I have about 30 days before this will expire, and it will give you the detailed information about the bill. Like I said, it's a 3 months trial is a capped thing, so nothing will be charged over here, and based upon my usage, I can see the computer hours, I have see storage, networking, and various things over here. And I can also download the full usage details of my whole service over here. And I can say that I want to see my current statement or download the old statement, which will be available for my reference. So I can just ask for it and let me say download usage. It will give me a nice Excel file which contains all of it. As we announced sometime back that I want to highlight it over here is a couple of things. Since we're talking about the usage is we now allow you, so we are offering that, wrong application that I opened it up. Let me just reopen it again. Let me go to desktop and save this. Go to my desktop and open with Excel. So this is how it gives me all my billing details. So it's my billing subscription and gives me full information that I can make use of all of my services day by day and then anything and everything that I get over here in my Azure portal, from our Azure portal. So this way you can just quickly just get going and all. One thing that I was telling you is that we announced few things during our TechEd event that we did in North America. First one is that Windows Azure, every time you shut down a VM, we will not charge the VM. So if I click onto the virtual machine, so this is my Azure portal, my VM is running. If I shut down the VM, we won't charge you for that VM. So no consumption of my compute power on that. That's one. Secondly, we have announced the per minute billing. It means that it's from per hour billing. It means that if you are running a VM for, let's say, 5 minutes or 20 minutes, we will charge you only for 30 minutes. Earlier it was like this way, if it was an hour billing. So if you use a VM for 1 hour and 10 minutes, we would used to charge you for full 2 hours because those 10 minutes are part of the second hour itself. But with this new per minute billing model, you can substantially, save the cost on this kind of a model over here. So once done, then I have this section where I have on the left hand side, I have all the Azure services that I can see in my subscription. And based upon the subscription, I can see the status, type, and detail. And on the bottom side, I have the section where I have a new button where I can just create the virtual. So here I can create a new virtual machine, new cloud service, new website, and everything. So what we can do is we can start, create using a virtual machine. So first thing, if I have to create a new virtual machine, so I have to go to compute, and I have to choose a virtual machine over here. One thing you will observe here is that this is not in the preview, so it's supported in production environment. I can quickly come over here and create a new virtual machine on the fly using quick create option, something like Aviraj-DC, choose an operating system. So you will see that we support Windows Server, 2008 R2, SQL, BizTalk, OpenSUSE, Ubuntu, OpenLogic, and more. And I can choose the various options. So I can choose extra small, small, medium, large, extra large. And the two new are the A6 and A7, which I just talked to you about. For obvious reasons, I cannot use administrator as a name. For a security purpose, we have decided not to allow users to use administrator as a username. So you will have to use your custom name. And for a password, I will have to provide my super complex password with a special character. I can't use the things like basic password. So if I password like this, it will not be accepted because it has to be a lowercase and uppercase character, number, and a special character. So let me use a special character, And then I have to choose in which data center I have to deploy this VM. So like I said, I have 8 data centers. I can choose that I want to deploy my VM in West US data center, and I have to choose which are the subscriptions I have to use to create a VM over here. So I'll choose a 3-month trial and say I want to create a VM over here. Second option is that I will say I want to create a VM from a gallery, which will give you the glimpse of full images with full detailed description about each of that, more choices to create in the VMs. I can see my custom images as well. So if I have uploaded a custom image of my Windows server with my application, I will be able to see it over here, or my disks over here. I'm going to say that I want to create a Windows Server 2012 machine, the data center edition. I can choose the latest version, which is my 17th May. Here, let me choose a VM name, which is Abhiraj or let me choose Abhi-WS 2012. So once I choose my particular details, I need to provide a DNS name. Now this DNS name is required through which I'm going to connect to my VM. So I'm going to say that Abhi-WS, something like that, or I can say that Abhiraj-VM, and it will choose an online name. Now this name is useful because this is a name through which I'm going to talk to that VM when it's created. So I can create an individual virtual machine where I'll get a dedicated, DNS name to manage at each VM. But if I have to make a VM as a part of the highly available set of VMs, I can say that connect a VM to an existing DNS name. So those VMs which are created behind this particular DNS name will be put up in the load balance mode. So that's the whole idea of using this model. But for this time, let me choose to keep an independent DNS name. Storage accounts. Storage account is a way through which I'm going to keep my BHD file at the blob storage. Blob means binary long object. Typically, it's a way to store large database objects in the storage. So I can create and automatically generate a storage account name, which will be something like this, portal VHD something. But I can choose a custom storage account name, which I can just quickly create from the wizard from new over there. And here I can choose, the region, affinity group, or a network. This network is my custom built network and custom built subnet mask. I can choose that. So my VM will get an IP address from this particular subnet range, IP range. I can choose region. So my VM will be created in that particular data center. So I'll say next. And lastly, I can create an availability set, which is for high availability. And I can also enable the PowerShell remoting on that VM. So let me just quickly say create, and it will start creating a new virtual machine, as you can see over here. It takes about 3 to 4 minutes to create a VM, so we can just get going. And just to show you how the VM looks like when it's created, I have this one VM which is already created over here in my different data center. So before I jump on, I want to show you a couple of things. I can click on a new and say data services. This is where I can quickly create a storage account. So something like this. I'll say that I want to create a storage account for my company name, let's say MSFT, let's say Corp, or let's say MSFT India, and I want to choose the location in US, and I want to choose a 3-month trial subscription, and I want to enable the geo, replication. So next time, whenever I'm going to keep the, the data, it will be there in this storage account. This time I use Avira storage account, it will be now MSFT India if I have to use that. Additionally, we have one more thing I want to talk to you about is the administration piece of Azure, wherein if I just scroll down and click on settings, this is where I can manage my management certificates, administrators, and the operation logs that I get from Azure environment, and the affinity groups. So what is an affinity group that you must have seen during a VM creation? Affinity group means that whenever you're creating multiple VMs within the same environment, it will be kept in the same data center. What does that mean? Affinity group is tied up to a data center. So for example, if I have 2 data centers in West US, but I don't have a control in which data center I have to keep a VM, whether in the first one and second one, because I just see West US as a one data center region, one region, right? When I create an affinity group, Azure makes sure that if you create multiple VMs, they will be kept in the same data center for easier connectivity, because it does not make sense if my VM VMs are scattered across different data centers, and they're taking a lot of time to talking to each other. So that's the whole idea of using this over here. So that's about affinity groups. I can also add the co-administrators to manage multiple subscriptions. For example, I have added myself as the co-admin on this particular subscription, which you can see over here. And if I click on the subscription tabs over here, I am seeing the emergency subscription as well. So this way I can add multiple accounts and I can give access to someone else as well. I just need to say add someone as the administrator with the live ID and or Microsoft account, and just select this option and click on OK, and it will get added. One of the things that you will also see in Azure is that on this side you will also see the progress about the things that I'm doing right now. For example, my VM is almost ready and it's ready for use now. It's getting ready in some time. I have created the storage account so I can see the status over here and some additional information about the details. So it says that this user has been added to manage subscription over here, and similarly my VM will be ready. Now once my VM is ready, I can just quickly go to my virtual machines tab, which will show me all the VMs over here, and I can just quickly connect to any of the VM that I have. So I can click on any of this side to see the VM status, and I can connect to the VM using connect option using RDP. So let's click connect. It will say that the portal will give you RDP file. I will say open, which will allow me to connect to that VM using the DNS name that we created over here. Now, if I just want to explain you how does that work, so here's my VM. I can shut down, restart, attach a new empty disk or a data disk to the VM. I can even delete a VM over here. But if I click onto the VM now, it will give me specific details about the VM, and I'll see some more options over here. Starting with dashboard. Dashboard will give me my VM stat, my CPU, disk, network utilization, real time for last 1 hour, or I can just change it to certain time that I want to see, like 24 hours and all. How's been the progress and all. If I just scroll down, you will see that my VM status is running. So if you see right now, I just consumed 1 core out of the 20 cores that I have in my 3 months trial over here. I just have 1 OS disk over here. I have not created any data disk of read-write type, which we just discussed. On the right-hand side, this is an interesting thing over here. Status of VM is running. I have a public DNS name through which I'm going to connect to the VM, which resolves to this public virtual IP address, which is called as a VIP over here. So it's like this. And internally, my VM has a computer name as avi-dc, which basically talks to my internal IP address, which is this. That's how the relationship works. It's a small instance of 1 core and it's got a 1 disk over here. I quickly show you how does that work. So if I just open command prompt, say ping avi-dc.cloudapp.net. Kind of, let me just I'll just say it's noted by 4 hours. Thank you. As you can see, it will resolve to this particular IP address, which is this is nothing but this IP address. Right, so that's how the works over there in this environment. And if I click on to this endpoints tab, this is where you will see that I'm actually using the RDP connection 3389 for my internal port for RDP, but through internet I'll be using this port, which is 51978. That's why if I have to connect to the VM from internet, I have to use this DNS name colon the port name. So now if you see, if I'm connecting to this VM, you will notice that I'm actually RDPing into the VM through this. And Azure does the internal redirection to the VM through this kind of a connection over here. So I'm just signing up to that VM right now. I'm RDPing into that VM and it will be able to show me my VM status over here. Meanwhile, if you see, my VM is now ready. So I can just quickly go to the VMs and you will see that the VM which we just created some time back is ready, avi-ws2012, with the same details like this, the details like this, The internal IP address is different because it's assigned by Azure, because I have not chosen any network configuration, but I have chosen the default data center over there. But in this example, I have created the custom network. So let me just try to log in again over here on this VM and see if I can connect. And let me also try to connect to this VM called as DC. Alright, it seems somehow the sorry, it's not working on that machine. So just let me give it a try. So let's say either of the VMs should be connected now in a minute. Right. So let me connect to the VM which we just newly created, WS2012. Just give it a shot. In this case, the endpoint is different because it's created by Azure. So if I just quickly show you the endpoint, it's same RDP endpoint, but this time Azure created a different one. So now let me see. Yeah, now let's give it a try. On this VM, let me close this. Cancel that. And even cancel this. So we are now connecting to the VM which we just created some time back, which is AWS and WS2012, and let me say yes to it. And now within a second I will be within a VM right now. And if there are any notifications, I should be able to see it over here. You know what, something is happening, so it could not retrieve from stack, so I can see that over here. By the way, I can also create similarly the virtual machine for Linux as well. Let me just minimize that. Say for Ubuntu, I can just quickly say next, quickly choose a distribution of a Linux VM, quickly give it a name as Aviraj Linux-AVI, choose certificate or a password, hit next, to the DNS name, choose a storage account that I have. I'll choose MSFK India, which we just created, create a network or the storage option over here, and I can quickly say next to it, that it's just checking if the name is available, next, and because it's not a PowerShell, it's not doing PowerShell option, and say connect, create. So here is my Windows Server machine that we just created, and if you just see, it's exactly like your on-premise virtual machine. Like I told you some time back, it contains two disk drives. One is the 127 GB OS disk, that's the standard configuration that you get for my OS, and then I'll also get this temporary storage, which will be kind of a cache storage used by my Azure environment over here. I want to show you something wherein I launch device manager and quickly show you the device manager. This is just to confirm you that this is actually my virtual machine actually. So this is my Hyper-V video, the same Hyper-V that we have in Windows Server 2012. I have the virtual input device, I have the virtual network device, I have the Hyper-V network adapter, and almost everything that I have in a VM, which is a Hyper-V based driver. So that's how it works. So I can just deploy anything and everything onto this, so like Active Directory, DNS, and a lot of things over here. So that's how I use Windows Server over here. I can even manage Linux as well. So I have this Ubuntu Linux VM running for a long time. Of course, we don't use RDP, so we use, let's say, SSH to connect to the VM to configure that. So for that, I'm going to connect to one of the VMs using PuTTY, which is a client. Let me connect to this VM called dp-ubuntu.cloudapp.net. That's the name of the VM to connect from the internet. And I'll say connect. So what I'm doing right now is that I'm connecting to a Linux machine using this particular PuTTY client. And let me just log in with administrator and a password. So this I created last year, so this is my Ubuntu 12.04, a very old version, and I can just do sudo hyphen space hyphen I, and I can log in as a root user, so I can just start using all the commands that I have. I'm currently in this. I can check environment, I can use apt install and many more commands to start configuring the various tools. I have configured the Tomcat Apache on this machine and also created the endpoint to access the Tomcat Apache like this over here. So by default it uses the SSH, and I've created Tomcat Apache on port 8080. So if I have to access my Tomcat Apache instance, I will just do dpe-ubuntu.cloudapp.net:8080, which will take me to a page which will load my website, which has been deployed by me. I can also access the documentation, examples, and I even have the manager control as well. So here I'm using this Tomcat credentials to just quickly sign in as a Tomcat administrator here, and I can just configure my full Tomcat over here. So I have some examples. I can just start using that, and it's fully configured Tomcat Apache running on my vanilla Ubuntu, Linux on Windows Azure. So this is the thing that we have. It's a cloudapp.net is our URL that we generally use to create the DNS name over there in Azure. So that's how it works. So that's the whole idea of showing that how can you create, effectively create the Tomcat Apache or applications in Azure environment. So that's my Tomcat. That's how it works. And now let me just talk to you about the management. So it's good that I can create a VM, so I can manage a VM over here and all. But what about the storage? Where is the VHD file? How can I download this VHD offline for my purpose? So I can go to the storage account. Every time I create a VM, I create a VHD file in a storage account. So storage account has got this, details. So it has got this link. So this is a storage account. So storage account has a name like this and a syntax, 3 DNS names: blob.core.windows.net, table.core.windows.net, and queue. So this is something that mostly developers use. We use blobs because we generally use to store VHD files. So if I go to containers, it will contain a container which is equivalent to the folder, you could say in a simple terms, which will host all the VHD files in the form of a blob storage, which you can download like this over here. So if you want to download a VHD file, VM, that we just newly created some time back, I can quickly say that I want to download a blob, which will allow you to download a full 127 GB VHD file like this, which I can use in my on-premise Hyper-V version, something like this. I can quickly come over here and say that I want to add a new hard disk and just browse to some VHD file like this and point to the VHD which I just downloaded. So I can quickly just come over here and on-premise I can start the Windows server, and this is one sample example. This will exactly look like this on-premise. So I can straight away go ahead and start using Windows Server, which is there in Azure, download it as a full VHD file, and use it on-premise with Hyper-V. So this is the fully supported way in production environment, which is called as VM mobility. And I will show you a way through which how can I upload my existing VHD file to my Azure environment. So for that, I'll just show you the next part of my demo, which is PowerShell management. So this is good. I'm using the portal. It's showing all the subscriptions, things like that. But how do I manage my whole environment using command line tools for automation, for scripting and all? So I can click on downloads, click on command line tools, and it will take me to a page where I will need to download the tools for Windows, Mac, or Linux over here. So for Windows, you will download the PowerShell tools from this location. So let me just quickly click onto it and download. I already downloaded that and installed it. So every time you download, it will install the tool through a utility called as the Web Platform Installer. It will install the latest version. Now since I have already installed it, it will be available to me like this. It will create a shortcut which I will need to launch it as an administrator over here. So it will be looking like this. So this is my Azure PowerShell portal that I can make use of for managing all my commands. So the first thing that I will need to do is I need to first say, type this command, get command module, and say Azure. it will list all the commands that I will get from this particular module if I install those PowerShell tools in Azure. So there are about these many commands for my VMs, VHDs, disk, network, storage, services, affinity groups, almost anything and everything for my database, PHP, virtual network, DNS, storage, anything and everything. There are total about 160 command lists that you can make use of to create. But let's start about management of Azure subscription. I have, say, about these many subscriptions available. But how do I want, just enlist all the VMs which are running into 3 months trial? How do I upload a VHD over here in this storage account, things like that? How can I do that? How can I manage the whole environment from PowerShell? So what I will be doing, I'll be, first of all, not a good idea to start this. I need to first of all make sure that my PowerShell will understand my Azure environment. So first thing I need to, authenticate from PowerShell to get that environment. So first thing I'll need to type is get Azure publish settings file. If I type this command, it will take me to a page where I will need to download a publishing file which contains the certificate or authentication data which will be used to talk to Azure portal. It will take me to a page where it will give me one file which is called as the Azure publish settings file, which will be looking like this. So let me store it as aviraj.settings file and let me open that up. It will contain the certificate thumbprint and all of my active subscription that I can make use of. So my PowerShell will understand that this is Azure I have to use. So once I downloaded that, the next command I have to use is import the Azure publish settings file. I have to give the path to the publish settings file, which is c:/users. You can put it anywhere you want. Azure, and say Aviraj. Yeah. So this is the path I have to give, path to the publish settings file. Hit enter. Once I do that, it will give me the output that okay, it's imported, and it will make some subscription, the default subscription, which is AZ pad, which you will anyway see it over here in my environment. But of course, I don't want to use this as a default because I have to choose this as my default subscription. So I have to choose this. So I can just quickly say that select subscription, say 3-month free trial. Just put this command and so select has to be Azure subscription 3-month trial. So once I select the subscription, I can type this command called as get Azure subscription, basically to get the list of all the subscriptions that I have in my environment. So I have one subscription which is AZ pad. Its subscription ID, which is very critical.
Hello, who is calling?
Then I have 3 months trial subscription. I have MSDN and I have things like that. You will notice that currently my default subscription is this. I think this property called as is default, but I need to change it to 3 months trial. This should be my default subscription, and I have to use the storage account called as Aviraj over here. So all I need to do is I need to say that set Azure subscription. I'll say default subscription is 3-month free trial. And if I just type subscription, this time if you see, my 3-month free trial is now my default subscription, and it's already using my storage account. Suppose if I have to use a different storage account, which is like one that example I created, something like MSFT India, I need to do this type the same command called as set subscription, Azure subscription name as 3 months trial, and use the current storage account as MSFT India. So if I just do the get subscription, and if you scroll up, you'll see that this time it's going to use 3 months trial as my default subscription, and it's going to use it's a default, and it's going to use MSFT India. Now, why do you need that? Because if you have to upload your custom VHD image with your own, operating system data into the specific storage account, you need to choose the default storage account before you upload it over here. Because whatever transaction that you're doing are are happening on this because this is the default one. For example, if I type this command get Azure VM, it will list all the VMs to this default subscription, which is this. So it should show us the result, something like this. It should show us the 3 VMs. So if I just come over here, and here are the 3 VMs, right? Because these are the 3 VMs which are associated with the Azure subscription. If I have to see how many VMs do I have, so if I say, so let me say get command image, so I'll say get Azure VM image, and if I say hit enter, it will basically enlist all the OS images that we are seeing on the gallery, all the Windows Server, Linux, and also through PowerShell, you can do that as well to create a VM, delete a VM, things like that. So I can create a new VM, I can delete a VM. Almost all the operations that I'm doing, I can do that over there. While it's loading the thing, let's do one thing. I have one VHD file, which is a 10 megabyte fixed size VHD file, which I want to upload to Azure for a demo purpose in that storage account, which is a fixed size VHD. So I'll just show you how do you do that over there. So here it is, the list. I can actually just, stop it and see the image. So for example, if it's SQL, I will see it's SQL, it's a VHD name, the full extension of that. I can see the description and things like that. So it shows you everything about the image. Now let's upload a VHD file which contains an OS to this particular storage account called as MSFT India. Let's create a new container called as VHDs. So I can put the data in the VHDs container. Okay, it already has a container actually, so Linux VM. Let's add one more VHD called as Aviraj over here. So what I will like to do is, I will say add Azure VHD. Local path is final. Aviraj VHD. The destination is, I have to give a full path of my storage account, which is http msftindia.blob.core.windows.net/VHDs, and my target blob name should be aviraj.vhd. Hit enter. Because it's a default subscription, it's already authenticated. It will now try to upload the same 10 megabyte VHD file to that subscription name. So when we ran a command called as get Azure publish settings file, which given us this publish settings file, what had happened exactly is that it actually created certain certificates for my machine. Scroll down, show you over here. So if you see, this created few certificates on the fly on today's date. So today's 12th, right? So it created these 4 certificates of same thing. They were just created some time back when I ran the command. So these certificates are newly created certificates which I can manage actually through the portal. These are the ones actually. So that's how it works. So I go to my PowerShell. It's doing the work. It's uploading it. So here it is. It's uploaded and it's completed. Now let's go back. So it's doing that job right now. It will take some time. Few minutes because it's a 10 MB. It's done. Let's go back to the storage account, MSFT India, and see containers or VHD. And here is our VHD. Now if I have to use the VHD is in a gallery like this, where I can create multiple VMs from the custom template, all I have to do is just go to the VMs over here, go to the images tab, and say I want to create a new template, new image called as my custom MSFT corp image. Sorry, I'll give it a name as MSFT image, my MSFT corp image. I have to choose a VHD URL, which in this case will be either of that. I can choose the one that I've uploaded, or I can choose any of the existing VHDs that I have in my storage accounts, like this. And I have to choose something like this. So I say that I have to run the sys step just to confirm. I have to choose an OS, Linux or Windows. And once done, I just need to click OK, and it will be available in the gallery as new OS that I can just go and quickly create that. One of the things that we have also done with Azure team is, like I said, we are open, right? So you can quickly say browse VM depot. This allows you to create a VM with a pre-configured application, open source application like your Joomla, Apache, PHP, Drupal, GitLab, and many more things pre-configured with Linux, like this, like MediaWiki on Ubuntu, and you can choose any of these 4 distributions over here. So if it's the Ubuntu, I can choose that I have, let's say, so many options available. I just need to click on Joomla, hit next, provide a subscription, hit next, and just create. And that's about it. Pretty straightforward. It's going to create a VM for me on the fly. So that's one option that you can just go ahead and create with this option, with this series over here. So that's about some of the features that we have added in Azure IaaS for managing the VM using the portal, managing the VM using the PowerShell scripts, and many more things over there. I can also create SharePoint. I can also create BizTalk SQL over there in Azure environment. So next I want to talk to you about some of the cloud services. Like I said, cloud services are nothing but for the developers, but in the end they also use the same VMs in the backend, which can be called as the instances actually. And then lastly, I want to talk to you about the networking piece over there in Azure environment. We allow you to create your own network in Azure environment. We allow you to bring your DNS to Azure environment, so you can have full option over there. You make use of the UDP traffic supported in Azure environment, which was not there. You can do port forwarding. You can build your own load balancers, things like that, fully supported in Azure environment. So this is how the experience would look like. I can create 2 VMs probably behind, the same cloud service like I told you some time back, and it will be acting as a load balance set, and I can connect to my internal VMs, inside, through the one DNS thing. So in case one VM goes down, other will be still serving up to my customers. We have internal load balancers over there. And one of the features that we have added with Windows Azure is the networking. This is the great feature. So networking allows me to connect to kind of the different set of network that I have, which is on-premise network and Azure network. So if this is my corporate enterprise, this is my Windows Azure, I can create a site-to-site VPN between my corporate network and Azure environment. So some VMs within my Azure network will be talking to my on-premise DNS name for name resolution and all. So it's like extending your private cloud to Azure IaaS to build a full hybrid environment over there in Azure environment. So the useful scenarios: build your own hybrid cloud, fully enterprise managed for your enterprise with full Active Directory authenticated in your environment over there. One thing that is required in order to achieve networking is that you need to have certain devices that you need to install in your corporate network to create a site-to-site VPN with Azure. You need to have either a Cisco 5500 1000 series device, including ISR, or you need to have a Juniper SRX series, J series, ISG series, or SSG series devices with GNOS or the ScreenOS. We support the IKE version 1, AES encryption, SSH encryption, and with 16th April, we also announced the support for software-based VPN solution. Means if you are an end user, you are a customer, you don't have these hardware devices, well, no problem. You can make use of Windows Server 2012 routing and remote access. You just need to configure it with your network, and you are like good to go over there. SLA, we already talked about it, so I'll just skip that. Fault domain and update domains. One of the things that we do in Windows Azure environment is in the back end, everything is powered by your servers, right? And just like any other data center, we also have the servers, racks, and all. And each rack contains multiple servers, multiple VMs, multiple power units, and things like that. We have to make sure that whenever you are kind of deploying your application or deploying a VM, we don't want that your 2 VMs within a service are created on a single rack. Because we are thinking about the server failure, we are thinking about the rack failure. So fault domain will make sure that your application or your VMs are scattered on different racks. So in case there's an issue with the power failure, or if one of the racks goes down, your application is still up and running to other instance running into different rack over there. An update domain means what? At a time, if we have to upgrade our host OS on the physical blade in the rack, because of the update domain, which is related to fault domain, if your application is scattered across different, the racks, like this example, I can make sure that I can update one instance at a time. So here, I have my update domain 1, I have my update domain 2. So if I have the same application scattered into multiple instances across different racks, if this goes down, this is still available. Or if this goes down, this is still available. That is the whole idea of doing this particular configuration. And we expect you to build this kind of the high availability set for things like IaaS SQL, something like always on group, or your IaaS load balancers, to make sure that in case of any downtime, the other one should be up and running, so there would be no downtime for your customer and your data. That is the whole idea of doing this over here. Like I said, if you're deploying a SQL or any other application, your SLA will be mattered if you have created the availability set for high availability. So that's how it will work. And this is one example that how does things work in the backend. You will have a SQL database, you have a VMs behind a single service and within a load balance mode, and you can access from the internet real time. So with this, let me just quickly jump on to some of the demonstrations on networking very quick fast. So let me share my desktop again, and I want to show you some pieces on how do you configure networking over here. So first thing, if I have to create a new network, I have to click on the new, create a network, click on the network and choose custom create. Here I'll give a network name as MSFT Corp. I want to create a network for Azure based application. So I'm building a network into cloud, into Azure. And I want to create it in a new affinity group called as MSFT AFG. Now what happens is that this particular affinity group, which is tied up to a specific data center. So every time I'm assigning these networks to this affinity group, it basically means that it is creating that in the same data center. That's the whole idea of doing that. And I can choose various subscriptions as well. I will hit next, and here it will ask me that, okay, what about all the VMs that are there in Azure? So this is my Azure VMs. Where should this VM point to for a DNS name? So there are two ways you can do this. I can do this kind of a network. I can build a local network and do a VPN, and I can say that all the VMs will be pointing to my on-premise DNS network. So if I say that I want to create a network I want to create a full network with Azure site-to-site VPN. This means my Azure VM is talking to on-premise. Let me say MSFT on-prem DNS, and that range is like this: 192.168.0.1. So here's the assumption. Let's say that my on-premise network is 192.168.0.0/16, which is 255.255.0.0. Okay. I have a IP range which is 192.168.0.255/24, which is 255.255.255.0. So that's my IP range. That's my subnet mask. And I have a public static IP connected to my Cisco gateway or my independent gateway, which is 131.107.111.111. And in my Windows Azure, I'm going to create a new IP range, which is 10.10.0.0/16, which is 255.255.0.0. And I'm going to create a new network range, which is 10.0.0.0/24. Again, it's 255.255.255.0, means 256 hosts technically, and one IP range which is let's say 1.0, which will be for my, again the same, this is my Azure gateway for network traffic. And of course, if you have to do a site-to-site VPN with this site, which is a site A, and assuming that my Azure is like my site B, then I need to also have one Azure gateway IP. This is nothing but a public IP that my Microsoft provides, which will be something like 164.blah.blah.blah.blah. How do I get to this? So this is my configuration, and I'm going to do a VPN between this and this, and all of my these VMs are point to the DNS address provided by on-premise network, which is 192.168, not 0.1. So that's how my whole configuration looks like. So now I'm going to say that all of my Azure VMs that I'm going to deploy, like AVDC and all, will be pointing to my on-premise DNS name over a VPN tunnel to name resolution. And of course, my local VM is anyways talking to my local DNS. So I can just do that. Or if I don't want to use a site-to-site VPN, I can say that I want to use only Azure-based network. I don't want to use an on-premise network. So that's the whole picture actually. There is no on-premise corporate network. There is no private cloud. It's just public network. But let's build a full end-to-end hybrid network. So here, let me say, this is my on-premise DNS. Hit next. It will ask me, give some details about your corporate network, which is this. So I'll say, what is your local network name? What is your IP range and all? So let's call it as on-prem network. On-prem network. And my address space on-premise, like I said, is 192.168.0.0. And this is 16. And I want to add an address space. I think that's fine. I just add. That's my address range, IP address range. That's it. My VPN device, which will be used for connecting at this point in time, is 131.107.111.111. This is my public static IP, which could be anything of your organization. Click next. And now it will ask me, okay, please provide me the Azure subscription. So I'll say my Azure IP range is 10.10.0.0, and I want to use 16 as my subnet mask, and I'll use one subnet as AD subnet, and I want to give it as 24. And I want to add Azure Gateway subnet, which is a mandatory, which will be, again, I can put it as 24. That's fine. So this whole network looks ready now. I'll just go ahead and create it. We have done one just to save time. So if I click onto this, I click on the dashboard, it will look like this. Here my corporate network, my on-premise Azure-based VM, so this VM is part of this network, is connected to the MTC net, which is my corporate network, pointing to my on-premise DNS. So just to reiterate, how does that work in this example? Here is my subscription. So here's my on-premise network is 10.101.0.0, and that's what my IP range is, 10.101.100. something, and my DNS that is on-premise is 10.100.99.3. And in Azure, we created other group which is 10.102. Range. So if you come and see this, compare it, and see the configuration of this network, see this is pointing to my on-premise DNS name, and my Azure range is this 10.102. But if you ask, what is my local range, Abhiraj? So my local network that I'm using in this example is MTC VNet, which is having the IP range of this, and my public VPN gateway address is this. 202 something. How does that look like when I configure that? So whenever I'm ready with all this configuration, how do I configure my VPN network? All you need to do is you need to make sure that your public VPN device is connected to internet, and once you come to Azure network like this is a network we just build over here. Just go to the thing. What is missing in that description is that you don't have this public Azure gateway device, right? So you need to click on this thing called as Create Gateway, choose a static routing, click OK. It will now give you a static public IP from Azure end, something like this. One that you will see on the screen, which is like this. This will be permanent for your subscription as long as you have subscription paid up and active. Once done, I can start creating a VMs on Azure, like this is the one VM which is created on Azure, which is MTC-VM. And if you see, the VM has got an IP address of the range that we configured in Azure environment, right? Internal name. So once done, go to the network, which is my networking over here. And you will need to just go to the dashboard. Once you get an IP address like this, you basically need to download a VPN device script based upon your choice, for a Cisco, for a Juniper, for any range, and for a Microsoft as well, which will use routing and remote access. Suppose you have a Cisco and ASA software, you just get the script. You will need to modify the script for your requirement, and once done, by filling up all the details like your network range, your security configuration, your IPsec configuration, and putting up the necessary details in these angular brackets like this, and like putting up the Azure Gateway IP address and all, I can show you if I have one which is already configured. You just need to copy and paste the same in your environment. So if I say Cisco, this is the sample script where you need to provide your on-premise network, Azure network, on-premise network, configure the access list, configure the security over here, configure the crypto configuration, and provide the Azure Gateway public IP address, provide a appreciate key, and you're good to go. Once done, all you need to do is just open up your router and just paste it, and that's it. Done. This connection will be established, and you can now exchange the data between this VM and your on-premise VM. I would like to show you firsthand. So if I go to my, in fact, I have RDP'd into the VM, which is called as NTC VM. If you go to this VM, you will see that I have connected to my remote environment, which is just using RDP, and I have this Cisco device. All I need to do is just click on the configuration. It will show you all the configuration. If you go to monitoring, and if you go to VPN, this is my Cisco device, it will show me the VPN connectivity with this gateway IP address, which is 168.61.69.25. You can just cross-check the same by verifying it. Like this is kind of bit difficult to operate because of the window. So yeah, if I just minimize that, you'll see this is IP address, right? And now whenever you end up just connecting to that VM environment remotely, this is the VM which is in Azure now. So if I just show you its IP configuration, you'll see that it's connected to my mtc.com domain. I can just open up the VM and see that it's actually running in Azure, but pointing to my on-premise corporate DNS. I can quickly open up the CMD and ping to any of my internal VMs, which is VMM 2012, and if you see, their IP address is 101 IP range. Because of the VPN, I can even access the file share, just like I'm sitting in that, corporate network. And this is all I'm doing it from Azure environment. This is all right now happening from Azure. So this is how the experience I get it. I can even kind of RDP into the VM as well. So if I say 2012, just connect, and it will ask me for credentials. So that's how seamless it is to quickly configure and use networking in Azure. So this is the meaning of hybrid cloud environment, where I'm kind of connected to the VM, doing the effective work on accessing the data. And all I need to do is just, this is the script that I have, which I just talking to you about, like this. This is the one. We just need to copy this and open up the device, Cisco device, open up the tools, and just paste it over here, and you will see all the references. Paste it. Let's see if it is copied. Control A, Control C, and Control V. That's about it. Hit send, and that's about it. Your connection will be established, and you will see all of your local network, your public IP network, external connected to the Azure, and it will configure everything, and you will be able to start seeing the traffic flowing around from my on-premise network to the Azure network. So this is how my full configuration works in Azure environment. So that's about networking. And if you just go to the portal, you will also observe that you can kind of create, it's quite annoying, this client. Yeah. So I can quickly come to new virtual machines, gallery. Say I want to deploy a SharePoint. I can quickly come over here and say I want to deploy a SharePoint. This time I will say that I want to say MTC SharePoint. Give a name, give a username, give a configuration, hit next. I'll say that I want to connect it to MTC on-premise network. Now, if I want this, SharePoint to be part of my MTC network, I will choose that connect it to MTC network, and it will get an IP address from this range in Azure. Sorry, this IP range in Azure, and I can put it into any of the storage account, and that's about it. And then I'll need to just configure a SharePoint. So what it will give me is that it will give me a VM, which will be added over here with the same IP range, which will be part of my corporate network, and I can manage this VM from all the monitoring tools. For example, if I could show you the last part of my demo, I'm just wrapping up in a minute. I can connect to a remote environment, and here if you see, what I have here is, let me connect to my OM 2012. So I have an operations manager. I'll just quickly show you one example that because that VM is part of your corporate network, what we have done is we have completely configured the full monitoring pack onto it, and I can actually see, for example, this one. This is a VM. I am monitoring this whole VM like that for a moment from my Azure and from my operations manager console. So this is the full topology MTC VM. I also have one more VM which I just deleted that. I can see that from my operations manager because it's like my corporate VM that I have in my environment. So this is the benefit that we get. And if you see this particular VM that I'm just talking about, which is MTC VM, if I go to the all programs of the VM which is into Azure, you will see because it is part of my corporate network, I have deployed the operations manager agent, system center endpoint protection. Everything is configured and controlled by my on-premise network. So this VM is fully connected to my corporate domain, fully controlled from my on-premise management tools. And this is right now running into Azure environment. So this is the beauty of, Windows Azure IaaS. So back to the last part of the presentation. This is all what we have. I have to cover up Azure environment through the VMs and through the networks, through the management tools over here. So quickly touching upon the key objectives and takeaways is that Windows Azure now supports the IaaS. That's a key takeaway. You can run your SQL, SharePoint, file servers, DNS, domain controller, Linux VMs, custom applications, almost anything and everything to Azure. You can extend it from on-premise to Azure or connect it to your on-premise network from Azure environment. Fully supported bidirectional, and we are the only provider for true hybrid cloud environment because this is where you can manage whole of your VMs and environment from your on-premise system center management tools that we have provided. And I'm also sharing my coordinates. My email address is raviraj@microsoft.com. If you have any questions, queries, do write to me. I'm also sharing my blog address and my Twitter handle.